So our specified entities have been performing to varying degrees of success. And to be honest, it's hard to understand the reason for some of the variances. It's hard to understand why some are doing so well in particular sectors and others are not. It's hard to understand why some are consistently at the bottom of the league table and others are not. So today we're going to get some help in understanding it and, more importantly, figuring out what we need to do to make them perform better. The president says the bottom five must sit up. Well, what will that sitting up look like? First of all, Raymond, you have the list?
Yes, at the extreme bottom is the institution Accra Digital Center. Just on top of that is the New Times Corporation. And the next one is Irrigation Company of Upper Regions. Now, the other one is Precious Minerals Marketing Company. That's PMMC. Now, there's also the Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company. So if you're just considering the bottom five, this is the group. Of course, just on top of that is the Ghana Railway Company Limited too. But Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company, Precious Minerals Marketing Company, Irrigation Company of Upper Regions, and the New Times Corporation. So these are the biggest corporates when it comes to poor performance, at least in the year that we are dealing with, which is year 2020. And the last time they actually put out the report, that's the most important part. Now, if you just look at, and I'm just maybe highlighting the worst of it all, the financial performance for the Accra Digital Company. Revenue recorded within the year amounted to 4.11 million. This was an increase of 18%, and the total revenue increased by an average of 90% also between the year 2016 and 2020. The liability for the same period ratios were 33.7, 15 and 29.97 between 2019 and 2020. The company's free cash flow position improved slightly, but the overall indication was that its performance was poor. In fact, AD's total weighted score in the 2020 performance contract was 2.34, which represents a poor, this is a part of the report, a poor performance on the nominalized 5-point scoring scale. And they detailed that. They say the center was not able to improve upon its financial performance over the period under consideration. And they say, whereas revenue remained virtually the same year by year, expenditure kept rising, culminating in the poor results that was recorded. The center exceeded all the targets previously engaged in set for, but it still did not deliver. ADC did not submit any of the documents it was required to submit and did not provide evidence of implementation under this dimension when it comes to dynamic effects. And the last one, ADC did not also submit documents, reports, and plans required under management improvement and projects. So it did not know the plans it had actually decided to undertake within the period. So this is what we have. The chief executive officer of ADC as of the time is written here as Kofi Ofosu Nkansa. And the auditors is the Ghana Audit Service. The governing board is made up of, so that we put in proper perspective. As of the time this report was released, the governing board is made up of Abraham Kofi Asante, who is the board chairman, Kofi Ofosu Nkansa, who I just mentioned as the CEO, Valerie Hudson, Nana Kofi Asafo Edu is also on the board, Prince Ofosu Sefa, Sharon Dedepadi, and Kosi Yanka Aye, Clara Penkrasam, Gary Nimakumafo is also on the board, or was also on the board, because it's a 2020 report. So if there's been changes, perhaps we may not be in the known of same. Yeah.
Interesting. And maybe as the conversation goes on, if we get the opportunity to highlight some of the others in the bottom five, we will do so.
We'll do so.
So this is the Public Enterprises League Table, PELT for short, something that was instituted by the Minister for Public Enterprises. The idea is to rank the performance of specified entities who signed the annual performance contract with SIGA. So these all these entities signed a contract that they would perform to a certain standard
against which they are being assessed.
Indeed. Okay. All right. Okay. So our guest, to help us understand what in God's name went on here is Dr. Daniel Appiah. He's a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. He's a public governance expert, and he likes to laugh at people who say blue fluoride. Dr. Appiah, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Right, it's my pleasure to you, and good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, quite clearly.
Right, and so good morning to our listeners.
Yeah.
And let me take this opportunity also to wish my dean, Professor Bawale, a belated happy birthday. He celebrated his
nice.
birthday yesterday.
That's nice. Okay, happy birthday belatedly to you, Professor Bawale. Okay.
Right.
Let's get into this. First of all, I mean, you've looked through the report. The auditors have been quite clear about where these institutions have failed. But I'm interested in the history of failure. Why have these institutions traditionally been doing so poorly?
Right, thank you very much. I am very happy that the conversation this morning even started by bringing up the issue of our independence celebration. When you spoke to Dr. Lech, I was listening, preparing towards our independence celebration. So I'll put it in that context, because Ghana gained independence in 1957 with an economy that was doing well. And then the whole world looked up to us to be the shining star of Africa. In fact, by 1960, when we gained Republican status, Ghana's GDP per capita was $3,230. And look, the GDP per capita for China in that same year, 1960, was $1,050. So Ghana was 3 times richer than China at the time that we gained our Republican status. Senegal had $2,650. Ethiopia had $620. So Ghana was performing far better than these countries. But guess what? Coming to 2019, now China has overtaken everyone, now with a per capita income of 15,380. And Ghana, of course, we've made some little progress. We reached 5,610. And so if we are demanding for better performance from this country and from our state-owned enterprises, as I said, it's got a history where this country was better and doing well, and our state-owned enterprises were doing well. And so the question then is, what has brought us to this particular point? As we speak now, among the bottom 5 is Ghana Railways Company Limited. But look, today, Ghana has sent a high-powered delegation to go to China. To do what? To go and negotiate for debt cancellation from China. But Senegal and Ethiopia, who were far below us and so are not even up to Ghana's level of economic standard. As we speak now, their railway system, Ethiopia has gone to China to negotiate for technical and financial assistance to build the first electric railway system in Africa. Senegal has also gone to China for technical and financial assistance to build also electric railway system. As we speak, perhaps we are still waiting for our sky train to drop down. But the point is this: as we go to China to go and negotiate for debt cancellation, we have to look back and ask ourselves what went wrong, what happened, and what should be done to put Ghana on the bright path again. So that has brought us to this important conversation about what we need to do to make our state-owned enterprises work better. Because when I was young, I used to take the train from Asimfosu to Achiase to Kumasi and then to Accra. But today, the rails are in tatters. Yeah. We don't have any regional railway networks. We have some locomotives that frequently topple over. It is time that we put our SOEs on track. Yeah. And we have to demand that they perform.
Doc, let me ask you this.
Is some kind of Daniel stick, like maybe some Samson stick.
Yeah. Doc, let me ask you this. I mean, yeah, it's true. Railway companies right there at the bottom, in the bottom 6. And you give these great examples of Senegal and Ethiopia, who are going to China just like Ghana, but they are going for a very different reason. They are going to look for technical assistance and financial support to develop their railway systems. I wonder though, I mean, has Ghana not done these things in the past? Have we not gone to China, gone to negotiate all kinds of loans and barter and all kinds of things to develop our country? Why is it that in spite of all of that, we don't have that infrastructure, we don't have a developed railway system or any of the things we went to China for help in developing? Rather, we are going to them to ask them to forgive us our debts. What accounts for the difference?
Right. It's a bigger conversation in terms of what accounts for the difference. So with Senegal and Ethiopia, it's not even that now they are going there. They've gone there, got technical assistance, got financial assistance, and they have already set up their electric railway systems running. They've launched them. And so what accounts for the difference? What accounts for the big difference between Ghana, Ethiopia, Senegal? At least from 1960, and we know when our state-owned enterprises were doing well, the country was doing better, then we entered into a period of one-party state. And then to get the opportunity to become a chief executive or manage a state-owned enterprise at the higher level, you were required to show party loyalty, party card, a CPP card. It wasn't really based on competence. By 1966, Nkrumah had been overthrown and was gone, and the trend followed. So throughout the years, management of our SOEs had largely become dependent on party loyalty, rather than competence at the end of the day. So that is looking at the SOE sector.
Right.
Another thing perhaps that we may have to look at is the fact that if you compare Ghana to all the African countries, you will see that it is only Ghana that goes to the polls, at least from under this fourth Republican Constitution. It is only Ghana that goes to the polls every 4 years to change the government and then to change those who are managing our public sector. You don't find any African country that goes to polls every 4 years. They go 5 years or more. So they have longer term duration for the executive to plan well, do long-term, medium-term projects, and then to execute them. But with us, as we speak, Mahama has gone to pick nomination forms. Alan Cash is out there campaigning. Meanwhile, we've got 2 more years to go for this country, for the current government's tenure in 2024. If you want to win the elections, you don't go do medium and long-term projects, revive railway sector. You have to go and then do short-term tomatoes, plantain, cassava, and then bring them to the center so that you win. So the nature of our governance system is different, far different from what you find in the majority, in all the African countries. And unless we take a good look at that, we won't be able to make progress. It's something that, as President Kufuor has emphasized, yesterday we heard the majority leader, or Seche Mensah, talking about a similar thing, that unless we retool and reform comprehensively our constitutional architecture of governance, we are not going to make progress. So that is a big difference. I emphasize, no other country, apart from Ghana and Nigeria, do their elections every 4 years, change the whole system. But all political governance experts and development experts have emphasized that if you are a developing country, you cannot use this short-termism to develop any long-term, medium-term infrastructural kind of project. And so the time has come for us to take a look at that.
If you just joined us, we're having a conversation with Dr. Daniel Appiah. He's a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. He's a public governance expert. And we're talking about these state-owned enterprises and their abysmal performance. Well, most of them, their abysmal performance. Now, there's a particular one that I'm interested in because it's in the bottom 5, but in fact, is the last but one, the second worst performing, entity. The interesting thing about it is that it is not the only state-owned enterprise in that sector. So there is a direct competitor to put it up against in comparison, and that is the New Times Corporation. Raymond, what does the report say about New Times Corporation's performance?
So it says in a sum that New Times Corporation obtained a total weighted score of 2.0, which represents a poor performance on the normalized 5-point scoring scale. That it actually was says. But on financial and economic part, it says NTC was able to record a small profit after tax after recording huge losses in the years preceding 2020. And it said NTC failed when it comes to dynamic effect to submit any of the plans and programs required under 2020. And when it comes to management improvement and projects, plans and programs were not also submitted, and projects which were slated for year 2020 were not also implemented. Now, going forward, submission and implementation of programs must be met. That's also what it gives as indication. So that's Kojo, generally what it says about its not only financial and economic performance, but also generally on the scale, which is up to 5-point scoring. It did 2, and out of the 2, this is tagged as very poor performance anyway.
Now, the reason why New Times Corporation is an interesting example is because we also have the Graphic Communications Group in the same list of, performances of, specified entities. And they were number 29. A clearly much better performance than New Times Corporation. What marks the difference? Two organizations, both government-owned, both doing the same thing, basically. Why is one doing infinitely better than the other?
That is a very important comparison. Because here we are with two organizations. In fact, if you go into their history, the history of New Times Corporation, it was even set up before Graphic came in. Because Graphic came in, it was set up by Cecil King in the late 1940s, and it started production in 1950. It came to meet Kwame Nkrumah's New Times. But Kwame Nkrumah's New Times or newspaper was party owned. And then Cecil King came in and established Graphic Communications, and it wasn't party owned. And this is one of the biggest differences that explains the difference between the poor performers and then those that are doing well. So one starts as a party-owned newspaper, and then now over the years, as Nkrumah got overthrown, now New Times Corporation now struggled to get itself out of partisan control. Now, Graphic Communications started and then was emphasizing issues of trust, objectivity, meritocratic recruitment. And those kind of values stayed with Graphic throughout the years. And so as we try to look and then compare the difference between the good performance and poor performance, we see some clear patterns. One is the issue of partisan interference, excessive partisan interference, as we see with the case of New Times Corporation, which was called the Guinea Press Limited. But as they now move along the years, in 1971, both were put on the same footing. Graphic was now acquired by the state in the 1960s. 71, it was renamed Graphic Communications, Graphic Corporations. New Times was also now renamed New Times Corporation. By the 1990s, the two were not doing well. In fact, we wanted to sell both Graphic and a New Times, but nobody was willing to even buy them. And then the IMF came in, and then they proposed structural adjustments reform programs, just as now currently we are negotiating with IMF. And the plan was that now let's give these two organizations the autonomy. Let's transform them into limited liability companies for them to be run as private entities, be on their own, pay their own staff, and then try to survive. At the same time, that approach, it was envisaged that it will reduce the partisan control, because if you're a private business, you will want to push away partisan influence. Graphic Communications Group Limited seized that opportunity. And here I'm talking about 1998. And I have all these legal documents here where Mr. Kwame Pepra signed the act and Parliament approved it for both Graphic Communications, at that time Graphic Corporations and New Times Corporation, to be made limited liability companies. But Graphic seized that opportunity. It was transformed. By 2000, by 2003, 2004, Graphic has started making profit. And guess what? New Times Corporation refused to take this offer to be on its feet. It's continued to rely on government subventions, and it's continued to go down and down and down. Until the IMF came in again somewhere in the 2010 when we went to the IMF 2011, 2012, and then they insisted that Ghana should remove the subvention from New Times Corporation. Gradually, government support or financial support was removed. By 2017, 2018, government financial support was totally gone. And interestingly, 2020, for the first time in 20 years, New Times Corporation reported profit. During the COVID period, when almost every other state-owned entity was reporting loss, New Times Corporation reported profit.
Right.
And so we can see that the trend where many SOEs that are making loss, depending on government subvention, depending on government financial support for survival, is untenable. It is time that we ask them to also survive on the markets on their own, to also out there compete. Like New Times being asked to compete just like Graphic Communications was out there competing and making profits consistently at the end of it. Even 2020, when Graphic reported a slight loss, New Times for the first time now reported profit. Why? They were no longer on government subvention. They knew that either you make profit and pay yourself or you were going to die. But there is much more. They had to also now learn from Graphic. They had to use the machines at Graphic now to print better quality newspapers to sell. Now you are on your own. If you don't sell better quality newspapers to make profit, you are going to die. And so this kind of lesson that we pick from these two state-owned enterprises can even be used now to also restructure the others that are failing. We go to the energy sector, we go to the infrastructure sector, agriculture sector, we find those that are failing. We need to ask ourselves, what are your counterparts that are succeeding? What have they been doing? What kind of lessons can we borrow from there to also restructure those that are within the same sector and failing? So at least the fact that New Times Corporation reported profit for the first time in 20 years or 2 decades give me some hope. That look, all is not lost. We can turn things around.
So you
those
would
that are failing can be transformed.
So you would suggest that actually weaning off state-owned enterprises from the milky government teat might be a positive strategy to get them up and running and performing for their own survival.
Exactly. Because in that same year when Graphic and New Times were given the opportunity to become limited liability companies, look, the best performing entity on the SOE league table is TDC Development Company Limited. It wasn't a limited. It wasn't a limited liability company. It was not run as a private entity. But that same year, that was also an organization that was failing. It was also taken off government subvention. It was made a limited liability entity to run on its own. Today, it is the #1 performer. Today, it is a best performer. And so keeping SOEs on government subvention is not a good strategy to go. Because these are entities that can make profits on the market and then succeed.
Right. Let's touch briefly on the irrigation company of Upper Regions. My first time hearing of this organization, but I think the clue is in the name, what they're supposed to be doing. Many are not surprised that they're not performing well. Ray, what's their story in brief?
Okay, so if I go straight to the irrigation company, the performance for 2020 says that when it comes to the financial and economic, of course, they must improve upon its IGF collection because it was not as good as they wanted it to be. Now, they recorded a total revenue of 1.96 million, comprising GOG's subvention of 1.31 million and IG of 0.64 million. Total revenue also, when it comes to profitability, they recorded some net profitability of 0.07 million in the year 2020, which is an improvement from the 0.01 million in 2019. The final point that Kojo, you should note when it comes to the key indicators here, that in operation and in the established criteria, the conclusion was that in the total way, they had 1.40 out of the 5-pointer that was given. They really were asked to improve upon their IGF collection and its activity. The company also did not submit nor indicate the levels of implementation when it comes to dynamic effects of plans, programs under the dimension. And under this group of indicators, their general idea was satisfactory, especially in the areas of maize, sorghum, granite, and rice and seeds. They were also asked to improve upon their performance when it comes to tomatoes and onions in general. So their score was a poor 1.40, and they were assessed as being poor, reflecting that particular score.
Doc.
Okay. So here we have companies that have signed performance contracts to improve three important areas. That is on the financial and then the economic side. And then another area being dynamic effects. Dynamic effect means you need to submit your plans to do better, your projects, your programs. What exactly are you going to do to improve your performance in the previous years? And then there is a third area of management improvement. How are you going to manage your staff? What kind of performance management systems do you have in there? And in terms of meetings, in terms of organizing your management meetings, improving how you manage the organization, submitting your audited report, and all that. You have signed contracts to be committed to this. But if you look at this irrigation company, and as you rightly noted, their poorest performance were in the area of the dynamic effects and in the management, meaning that they had no plans or they did not submit plans in terms and programs in terms of how they were going to turn around their fortunes. If you look at their public financial management system, they did not really abide by the statutory regulations governing the public financial management. They also do not have very good employee performance management systems. And so you cannot turn around your economic fortunes by neglecting these things, because you must have a strategy. You must have a goal. You must have some projects and programs to turn around how you are performing. And so if you fail to put in place these important aspects that can help you to improve your economic performance, then at the end of the year, you should not be surprised that the year will end and you are more likely to make a loss. But at least the good side is that this is a company that made some kind of profit. And so if they pay attention to developing appropriate strategies, appropriate programs, employee performance management systems, they pay attention to how they manage their finances, it is a company that can be turned around. I visited the northern region for the first time last year, and wow, the vast lands. And I saw how hard-working the people in those kind of regions really were. Almost around every house, you see someone making some farm, vast lands out there. And so this is a company that can certainly be transformed to make Ghana, help make Ghana, self-sufficient in food production. So all is not lost, but they must pay attention to the management aspects. They must pay attention if they need help to put up better strategies, better projects to transform this organization, because they have the potential really to succeed.
I just noticed while you were talking about the irrigation company of Upper Regions that another poorly performing news organization was the Ghana News Agency. They were the seventh worst. It's just worth mentioning since we were doing a comparative analysis. They didn't do very well either. Okay, PMMC, Precious Minerals Marketing Company. Raymond, the story.
Okay, so when it comes to PMMC, the detail here suggests that on the key performance, now they obtain a weighted score of 1.61, perhaps one of the poorest you have seen so far, representing a poor performance. That's what the report indicates here. But when you break it down, it says third-party exports and assay activities were affected by the ban on small-scale mining. Right. The company also was confronted with a huge interest payment due the banks. 2, dynamic effects. PMMC submitted all the requisite documents and programs required on time, with the exception of its R&D, research and development program. However, the level of implementation of these programs could not be ascertained. Now, the last one is on management improvement projects. PMMC failed to meet deadlines agreed in the 2020 performance contract related to the submission of requisite documents, plans, and programs when it comes to management improvement projects. all of it put together is what really got them the mark of the very low 1.61. And if you want to be clear, the CEO of PMMC as of the time was Alhaji Al Hassan Sule Mana. And there were other people, including Nana Kwesiwa, Kingston Akumia on the board, then also S.E. Ashona, and there is also Kofi Mensah Demitia also on this particular board.
So Doc, I mean, one thing seems to run through all these companies is the poor governance structures, the failure to submit all kinds of important documents. They are just failing there. But in this case, another thing I would like for you to touch on, if you may, with PMMC, there was an obvious external factor, the ban on small-scale mining. Should that not have been factored into the targeting for that year so that they don't, come out looking so poor?
Yes, you are right. But if you look at the trend, and it points largely to management, but also there are some external factors with regards to PMMC. For how long is PMMC going to depend on small-scale miners and then galamsey people? Let me use that term advisedly, galamsey. Now, as we now hit rock bottom as a country, are we not doing gold for oil exchange? What's prevented us all these years now to say that, look, all the the gold mining companies, the diamond mining companies, we have a company here called PAMC. It is mandatory that you sell a certain percentage of whatever that you mine to PMMC to transform, to refine, and then to use it to make whatever jewelry and then to sell. That will have transformed the fortunes of PMMC. Because if you look at PMMC's story, as you rightly pointed out, it's an external factor. It is not an entity that always has been making losses. If you look at the report, in 2018, PMMC reported a loss of minus 3.31 million. But 2019, they turned around their fortune. And they made profit of 3,330,000 or so. And then 2020, the profit margin reduced drastically due to COVID-19 and the ban on small scale. So it's pointing us to a solution. It is time that we negotiate with our mining companies, private mining companies, to make use of our state-owned enterprises that have been created to refine our gold and our jewelry, to transform and turn things around. If we can do gold for oil, the same way we can also help PMMC to survive. And so I am calling on the relevant authorities to turn their attention to PMMC because they've shown that if they are supported, they can really make profit. They can make profit.
Yeah. This governance issue, though, I mean, and it weaves through all of them. I'm sure the next two that we talk about will bring up the same issues. Failure to deliver documentation, reports, financials, the things that will demonstrate to your shareholder, in this case government, that you are doing the job, that you are earning your pay, that you are making use of the resources. Over 50% of our nation's assets that are in your care, they are simply refusing to abide by these things, and nobody is being jailed, nobody is being sacked, nobody is even being suspended for it. How sustainable is this nonchalant attitude towards governance?
This is not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all. But happily, yesterday I was in a conversation with someone at the Ministry of Public Enterprises, and let me take this opportunity to commend the ministry for coming up with the Public Enterprises League table and not looking at the issue of profitability, but performance in other areas. At least for the first time, everyone can look and see that some chief executives are even failing to do the simplest thing of coming up with their strategic plans, submitting audited accounts or audited financial statements, coming up with programs to revive entities. I think that it should be the minimum requirement for a CEO to continue to be even in office. If you've been in office and for 2 years, 3 years, all you keep submitting is draft financial statements, no strategic plans, you are not able to come up also and then implement your strategic plans, I don't think that you should continue to be in that office. And so it is time that both the ministry and then the presidency take a good look at the report and then demand that going forward, because if you look at all the poor performers, almost all of them, over 90-something% of them, could not even produce their audited financial statement. They couldn't produce what investors require in terms of strategies to turn around their fortunes. If, as a chief executive and with your team, you are not able to deliver on these things, you should be fired. You should not be maintained in office. But it is a problem that I noted that it's cut across even the entire public sector. Because if you look at the 2015 public sector public service report, over 60% of chief executives stated that they don't have the competence and skills in the area of strategic management. And so once they've indicated those things, at least if you want to keep them there, it is important that we train them and then with their team about how to manage the entities strategically. And it's been 7 years, 8 years down the line. At least yesterday, I was happy to hear that the ministry has taken up this particular task of offering strategic management training to CEOs. So it is important that we train them, we refine and then we retool their knowledge with regards to how to manage strategically. And for performance contract that they have signed, if a chief executive is unable to show any strategic plan, is unable to submit audited financial statement, the person should be fired. So this should not be a report that should just be sitting there and then gathering dust. We should use it and then demand that they really are held accountable for the contracts that they've signed.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company Limited. Ray.
Now, GCMC obtained a total weighted score of 1.67 in implementation of the 2020 performance contract. The company's performance was therefore assessed as poor based on the normalized 5-point scoring scale. GCMC scored on average 0.30 under the financial economic dimension. And that was the other one. So the efficiency, when it comes to efficiency, dynamic efficiency dimension, it was also 0.30. Now, dynamic efficiency measures the extent to which the DMNC is investing in actions which ensure its long-term viability. Now, GCMC also achieved a 0.40 average weighted score for the management improvements and project implementation. This reflects GCMC's efficiency in project implementation and efforts towards good corporate governance practices. So, Kojo, that's the general assessment of this one. 1.67 construed generally as poor performance.
Am I mistaken? Is this company not essentially a monopoly? Are there other cylinder manufacturing companies in Ghana?
It is a monopoly.
It is
a monopoly. Right. I buy my cylinders from people who have imported them from outside this country. In fact, and the question is, how many of us really even know that we manufacture cylinders in this country? The Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company, you are the only cylinder manufacturing entity in this country. To what extent have you come up with programs, at least to help the citizenry know that you are doing something like this and encourage citizens to buy the made in Ghana cylinders? And so at the end of the day, it is not, and this should not be very hard for the company to do, to advertise on TV, to advertise on radio. That look, if you are going out there to buy a cylinder, look out for the one manufactured in Ghana. Look out for the Ghana manufacturing cylinder, so that at the end of the day, you will be helping the company to transform its fortunes. Some time ago, I wanted to buy a laptop. I was in Norway, wanted to buy a laptop, and I asked the Chinese to buy me Toshiba. They said, Daniel, if you want me to buy, I wanted IBM. He said that if you want me to buy a Chinese manufactured laptop for you, I will buy it. But what you are asking me to buy for you is manufactured in Japan. Toshiba is not manufactured in China, and I am a Chinese. I stand for Chinese products. So that is the extent to which citizens in other countries or elsewhere are willing to stand and then promote their made in whatever country's goods. But in Ghana, we have state-owned entities that are monopolists, manufacturing things, producing things, and yet they've made little to no effort whatsoever to advertise for the Ghanaian citizenry to even support them. So it is time that we throw a light on that area. It's time that we support these state-owned entities, at least to advertise their products. It is time that we ask that as part of their strategic management plans, they should also have plans with regards to advertisement of their product on TV, on radio, for the citizens to know. We just talk about irrigation. How many of us know that we have a company that is producing tomatoes out there for people? Why can't we encourage our tomato sellers, our market queen mothers to go out there and then buy their tomatoes from there so that they will be able to support this country? It is time that we really do that. And so we need to emphasize made in Ghana products. We need to support the SOEs that are manufacturing things within this country to advertise them very well. Whether in the schools, they can go to primary school, GHS, SHS, universities to advertise whatever they are doing, apart from doing it on radio. And I think it will help to a large extent to turn around their fortunes.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, so we've done the bottom 5, but there are so many other companies here. I don't want us to limit ourselves because there are many examples that we can learn from. I mean, look, the 6th worst performing was the Ghana Railway Company. You've already talked about that. 7th worst, Ghana News Agency. 8th worst, Grains and Legumes Development Board. Now, this company is interesting. Raymond, see if you can find out who the CEO or director is. This Grains and Legumes Development Board has 92 employees. They made a total revenue of 2.83 million Ghana cedis. And I made a point 2 days ago that is about enough money to buy maybe 2 Land Cruisers. Their entire revenue will buy 2 Land Cruisers. And doesn't Antimuni sell more wachi than that? So how can we have on our books a Grains and Legumes Development Board headed by who? Have we got the MD yet? We're looking for the MD's name. And they are making literally no contribution. Because with a revenue like that, no doubt they made a loss, which is why they are the 7th or 8th worst company. What is the right... Doc, just as you are wrapping up, I want you to, touch on organizations like this that seem to be playing little or no role, to national development, employing dozens of people and making no money.
Kojo, good morning. And then, if you look at organizations like this, in fact, it beggars belief that Ghana, being an agrarian economy, we have vast land, arable land, and we have an SOE that is into grains and legumes. And yet, the company is not doing well. Come on. This has to be something that we have to ask external forces. When we were doing the one job, planting for food and jobs, did we involve them? When we were, making strategies and then programs for the Ministry of Agri, did we look at grains and then legumes? We have many countries that have come to Ghana to acquire land. They have undertaken vast commercial, agricultural production and exporting food and other things back to their countries. And we have grains and legumes sitting here, not performing well. It is time that really we take advantage of our competitive strengths and then give maximum support to these SOEs that are in the agricultural sector. Because it is a company that has shown that at least even with the little, they are able to make some revenue. They have acquired some competence over the years. They have acquired some experience over the years. It is time that we support them. We invest in our competitive areas of advantage. And this is one company that I look forward to see the Ministry of Public Enterprise take a careful look in how to make this company really turn around. COVID-19 came, many countries shut their borders. Many countries had food crisis, food shortages, even in UK. Food were being rationed in the shops. That was an opportunity for Ghana really to take advantage because we are an agrarian country. That was an opportunity for us really to make inroads and export more food. But were we prepared? Were we prepared at that time? So businesses like that have shown that given little, they can be profitable. They can make revenue. Let us turn our attention to them. It is not like, let's say, a Metro Mass. And even a Metro Mass, if you look at the bottom stage 6 out there, Metro Mass Company Limited, why should VIP be making profit? How did STC make profit? Because in the same sector, we saw STC that was collapsing. Today, STC is paying back dividends, hundreds of thousands of dollars back to government. Why should Metro Mass fail in that same sector? The strategies that have been employed to make STC succeed, why can't we also transfer it to Metro Mass, for Metro Mass also to turn around its fortunes? So for some of these entities, at least we have good practices. We have bad practices of counterpart companies that are succeeding. And we can use those practices to transfer to the least successful ones for them to turn around. But once again, I emphasize that going forward, we don't have to sit down again for another COVID to come, for countries out there to run into food shortages, and we will sit on our vast arable land and be unable to really export to other countries. Still looking up to Ukraine, that has been torn by war, for them to supply us wheat and then grains. What country are we? Where is our strategic leadership? Where are the strategic plans? What did we do? It is time that we really look into ourselves and then look at the companies that we can really support to help turn around the fortunes of this country, so that we wouldn't go to the IMF again to go and then beg for debt cancellation when other countries have gone there to seek technical assistance to put up electric railway systems.
Raymond, you found the name of the entity head for the Grains and Legumes Development Board. What's his name again?
His name, as represented on the SIGA website, is Dr. Robert Asubua.
Okay. So, I mean, you have to... this is somebody I would love to interview. I mean, I'm very interested to know when Egypt decided to start growing their own wheat at the announcement of the Ukraine war. When United Arab Emirates started growing fields and fields of wheat that they are now ready to harvest. What did our own Grains and Legumes Development Board do? Did they have any ideas, proposals, plans? Is it that they were not funded? I'd like to know. I'd very much like to know. I want to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Daniel Appiah, for joining us this morning and helping us dig into some of these mysteries of the continued failure of some of our specified entities. Dr. Appiah is a lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School and public governance expert. Once again, thank you so much for your time.